Hello and welcome to part 2 of my music creation series. My name is Christomator, and on SoundCloud I go by Rain and Flashing Lights. In this video, I'll be teaching you basic knowledge of Ableton Live music software. This tutorial assumes that you already have Ableton Live and Massive installed, though Massive isn't necessary at all. To start, let's look at some of the important things on screen. On the left here is the tool browser, for lack of a better name. The tool browser contains audio effects, MIDI effects, instruments, pre-made instruments, plugins, and a browser of your computer, basically, Explorer, so to speak. Also, in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, there is the time signature and tempo. If you don't know what those mean, I would recommend a Google search or an investment in piano lessons. Also, at the top middle of your screen, there is the play button, the stop button, and the record button. This button is the back to composition mode button, which I will go over at a later period. On screen, you're seeing one of the two modes for Ableton Live. The one we're looking at is the composition view. You can change to the other view, the arrangement view, by either pressing tab or pressing this button here. The arrangement view is for arranging your song, taking loops from the composition view and positioning and cropping them. Imagine it like the standard mode of GarageBand. First, let's go over instruments. You can get to the instruments by pressing the credit card looking button here, then pressing the triangle next to the instruments folder. The instruments I use most are Impulse, Simpler, and on the rare occasion I use Instrument Rack. Though with the plugin Massive, you can create instruments without having to use Ableton Live presets, which aren't the finest. So for the sake of learning today, let's go into the instrument rack and just drag a random one over. I'm going to use Synth Watery Pipe, though any will do. Click on it, then drag it into the empty space that says Drop Files and Devices here. Let go, and it'll create a new instrument. All of these rectangles, for lack of a better term, are slots for loops. The circle to the left is a record button. If you have a MIDI controller, click this, then play something, and it'll record into the loop. On the bottom, there are about 5 things we need to worry about. This red button down here is the recording armed button, so to speak. Unclick it, or just click it, and the track can no longer be recorded to. Notice that the circles turn to squares. Now, these are stop buttons. Also, we have the S button, or the solo button. By clicking it, it'll decrease the volume of all the other tracks to 0, so you can only hear this. Over here is the sound control. We'll get back to this a little later once we have something going. This is the pan dial. What it basically does is, by moving your mouse up and down, you can change its position, and if it's on the right, then it's going to send sound to the right, your right earphone or right speaker. Move it over to the left, and it's going to send sound to the left speaker. By the severity of how much orange there is, that will be how much sound is being sent to that headphone. Having it in the middle will have the sound going to both headphones at once. Lastly, there are the A and B dials. I'll get back to these later at the same time as the volume. To make our first loop, double-click on one of the rectangles on your instrument. Note that you do not need to have the track armed to do any of this. This will open up a piano roll, fundamentally a grid to place notes on. Press the headphone icon on the upper left hand of the screen, or upper left hand of the piano roll, so that you can hear the notes that you input as you input them. Double-click on the first rectangle here next to C. The sound you just heard is the beginning of your new life. Next to what you just put down, on the left side of the piano roll, it'll show which note you just put in. I just put in C, on the 3rd octave. For those of you who aren't musical, octaves are how high up on the pitch scale is. So if I'm at like octave 8, it's going to be from the bottom. Just imagine a piano. If you play the lowest note on the piano, that's going to be octave 1. Octave 8 is going to be 8 times higher. Below it, you should see a part of the grid that has no keys on it. If you don't see it, it's probably that you see this. Click on the arrow at the bottom left of the screen, and it'll come up. This will adjust the volume of each individual note. Position your cursor at the end of the note until your cursor turns into a bracket, then click and drag to adjust how long the note is. Keep in mind that if the sound is not infinite, the note can only be as long as the sound that it's playing. Using the information I just showed you, I'm going to create a loop. Oh, and to play your track while creating it, press the play button on the rectangle. Once you've done that, you can just press spacebar. Or not. Never mind. Another way you can do that is by pressing by bringing your mouse up to the top, to that grayish bluish bar until the cursor becomes a speaker. Click, and it'll play. So, now I've created a little track. To make yours longer, position your mouse to the right-hand side of the screen, next to the two triangles here, until your mouse turns into a bracket, not a triangle. Click and drag to the side, and you can make it longer. The default is 1 measure. Drag it out to 3, and it'll become 2 measures long. Now that you've got all this space, you have to move around in it. So position your cursor over this thing I can't really describe, and move your mouse side to side to scroll through it. Move your mouse up and down to zoom in and zoom out. Now that I have my loop to my satisfaction, I want to create a beat for it. Go back to your instruments under the credit card looking thing, go to Impulse, press the arrow next to it, and drag out a kit. I'm going to be using dub delay. Every new instrument you create immediately becomes armed. Double click on the rectangle, and now you have a similar looking piano roll. Instead of notes, you have different sounds. Note that if you want to make something offbeat or just want to be a little more precise, you can press Control 1 and Control 2 to increase and decrease the size of your grid. For this particular kit, I'm going to be using the standard kick snare with some hit-hats on top, or hi-hats on top. With all that, it's going to sound about like this. Oh, not like that. To stop something from playing, just press the square button anywhere else. Or, here, stop clips. Or press the square button on the instrument. You can't press square here and stop this. Now, this is what it sounds like. Now, to play both of these at the same time, all I have to do is, now that the arrow here is green, press on this play button. Now that's odd. The drum is a little bit too loud, and the synth is a little bit too soft. You can adjust the volume by using the volume slider down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna make this a little loud, or make this a little softer. Now the drum sounds more like a complementary thing as opposed to the main melody. Mind you that if the you notice this green here, which is the sound that's being outputted, on the right is what's coming to your right headphone, and to the left is what's coming to your left headphone, or speaker, that is. If it gets up past this line here and starts becoming orange or red, that means that it's distorting. You almost never want distortion in music. One thing to mention is that the A and B channel, which I didn't get to before, sends sounds to each of these here, A return and B return. So if you want to boost the sound of something that you're making, then just turn up the A channel. But you always have to look here because it might distort over here, and you heard that distortion sound. Nobody really likes that, so there we go. I can always just turn these back down. Note that this here is the same panning to the left and right headphone as is over here. Now this current drum beat here doesn't sound so bad, but I'd rather something a little more dubsteppy. Drag out another kit. Ta-da! Just double click on it, click the headphone thing, and let's see what I want to make. And notice how it's going all the way up into the red there. We don't want that. Drag it down, and now nice and green. Friendly green. So let's see how this sounds. Oh. Press stop. Now let's see. Doesn't really fit, but you know, works anyways. If you have your own drum sounds, like a drum sound pack, I have the Vengeance pack. Click on Impulse and drag it out into the empty space, the void, so to speak. Now, down here, we have all these spaces for instruments. So, go down to one of the folders. Folder 2 is usually the one that usually the one you can use. Navigate to wherever you want to be, and then I'm gonna just drag your sound files into here. So I'm just dragging random bass drums in, nothing important. But now I've got all these empty slots up here, and I have these bass drums. Turn the headphones on, I can hear them. Of course, a little bit loud. Still a little bit distorting. Anyway, so that's how you create your own custom drum kit. To assemble and output your first song, there are two ways to put it together. You can create it live by pressing the record button at the top of the screen, then just playing the clips as you like. Keep in mind, you don't need to be so precise with pressing play, because it will only start at the beginning of every measure. Also notice that what you just played was recorded into the arrangement view. Like I said before, imagine the arrangement view like GarageBand. The other way you can assemble your song is by clicking, dragging, pressing tab, and then dropping into the correct instrument slot. So this here says, the slot that I'm in right now says synth, and that is the same as the synth over here. So drag it in, and it's going to sound like the synth. Now, unfortunately, you can accidentally drag it and drop it to the wrong thing. So if I drag this to dub delay instead of synth, it sounds a little bit different. So let's just keep it where it belongs, yeah? Then drag my dub delay, and let's arrange, shall we? Also note that this button here, that I'd mentioned before, if I'm over here and it's purple, if you're ever wanting to hear what you can play here, or if you ever want to hear what you have here, then just unclick this button, or click it, that unclicks it. Because if this is on, or purple, then it'll be playing the things that are playing here, not the things that are playing here. Once your song is satisfactory, click and drag to select the part of it that you want to export. If your song has an echo, you're going to want to select more than is showing up, because the echoes will continue beyond the loops. Next, click File, Export Audio/Video, though we have no video. I didn't even know Ableton Live did video. Then press OK, unless you want to change the file type. Unfortunately, Ableton Live only outputs WAV and AIFF. The preset settings will be probably good for any file you want to do right now. Press OK. Name it Generic Song of Doom. Okay. Then save. Give it a second. Elevator music cue. Anyway. And now, you have just created the first song in Ableton Live. Congratulations. Thank you for watching. If you somehow learned nothing in this video, please feel free to dislike and leave hateful comments to this video. However, if you did learn something, please like, favorite, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I will see you in my next tutorial. My name is Chris Tomater, and on SoundCloud, Rain of Flashing Lights.